So until now, our entire interface has been readline and this recursive prompt function, and our UI kind of sucks. So if I say explain task.ts to me, couple things here. We do not have the ability to put in multi-line stuff without it getting weird. We certainly can't like shift enter. The response that we're going to get back here is not going to be formatted at all. And at this very moment, we have no idea what the AI is doing. So there's our response. Again, no formatting. And we're back to our pretty gross input. So we're going to solve that. I have installed TUI and Chalk. I'm going to create a new file here called ui.ts. I'm going to import a bunch of stuff here. So we've got a whole bunch of elements and components from TUI. We've got this component type. We've got our model message, Chalk, and this Markdown theme guy. Now these themes control how the thing looks, and I'm just going to drop these in. I did not make these. These were something I found somewhere. So we got a UI theme, and we got a Markdown theme. We are going to export a class called agent UI that implements component. Now I've kept this code very simple, but there is a lot of it, so I'm going to do some pasting here. Okay, so we've got a couple internalized elements here. We've got TUI, which is our processor or process terminal from the TUI library. That is going to kind of translate our inputs and outputs for us in the terminal interface. We've got editor, which is a component, uses our UI theme, this padding X1. I think I got it from the docs. Thinking loader is going to be, it's going to help us solve the problem of not knowing what our LLM is doing. And current action is going to be a part of that as well. So rather than just a spinner that says it's thinking, when we have tools being called or results coming back, we want to have something there that says I'm reading a file, I'm doing something. And this MD cache is kind of poorly named because I'm not really doing any caching here. But this is just going to be a map over the Markdown components that we're going to create. So Markdown is a component. In order for us to express that in the UI and get into our message history, we're going to have to like feed it into and get it back out of a Markdown component. And we've got this on input, which is kind of replacing our prompt that we had previously, our recursive prompt function here. But either way, we'll get there. Okay, again, I'm going to be just kind of dropping some things in here. We have our constructor, which is going to take in our history. So this is very similar to our agent loop. We're immediately going to add this to our TUI. So our agent UI is actually a component. TUI is the whole thing. So we're adding ourselves to that, and then we're adding the editor to the TUI. Editor is going to get it on submit. And all I'm saying here is if we have a thinking loader, I don't want you to be able to input for now. I could circle back on that, but whatever. And if we do, then we're going to call our on input. We've got one input listener for control C, and that's just going to exit, and that's it. And then, of course, if we get an interruption or a termination, we're going to exit our application. Start, this is just part of the component definition, so we're going to start up our TUI. And this guy right here, I've had mixed results in getting the cursor to focus in the user input, which is what our editor is, by the way. We're utilizing that as the user message input. So I'm kind of setting focus twice here, but this has worked out for me. So I set it on the editor itself equal to true. And then in the TUI, I set focus to that component. And then our exit is just stop everything and exit the process. Okay, everything I'm about to drop in, I'm calling our rendering helpers. So we got a pen spacer. It's going to push an empty line into our lines. And if you remember, lines or this is our history that we've always had. It's always been here. We're pushing in, and the messages, and I'm sure somewhere up here we probably did an empty line as well, just to create a little space in the UI. Coloring our messages, if it's a user, I want it to be green, otherwise I want it to be white. This is a render of the assistant message, and this is where we're going to use our Markdown. So we check to see if it's in the cache, and if it's not, we are creating a new Markdown component, and then we're setting that into our Markdown map, and then we render that guy, or well, we return the render of that. Now, plain message is just get the message text, split it by the line breaks, and output it. We're using that color message, so if it's a user, it'll be green, and if it's something else, it'll be white. Then we have render message, and that's just calling those two functions. So if it's assistant, we're going to call render assistant message, and otherwise we're going to call render plain message, and that could be a user or a tool or something else. Now, append thinking, we have our lines, and we have this width. And just to mention, this width, that we haven't used it yet. The width is basically the size of the screen that the TUI is more or less taking care of for us. So if we don't have a thinking loader, just exit out of this. Otherwise, append an empty line and then push into our history thinking loader render with the width. And then if we've got this thing called current action, and that is the thing I was talking about where I want to see if it's like reading a file or something like that. So we're going to have a little return line there, and then in gray we're going to have our current action, and that's just going to be like ephemeral. There'll be a little loader and a little gray thing that says this is what I'm doing. Fit width is mostly just a method, or I'm wrapping this. I want to get to this truncate to width right here. So we basically look at the line and we say if the visible width of the line, and this is a method that we get from the library, is greater than the width, then truncate the line to the width. Otherwise, just return the line. And then get message text. We've seen it a couple times up here. Okay, then after that, we're going to have our basic push, which is really the exact same as what we were doing before. We're pushing into the history. The difference here is we're also requesting that the TUI re-render, and we're updating the editor text to nothing. So we want to keep that in place and have, your message move into the message area and not remain in the editor. Then very simple functions, set action status. We're going to take in the action, set our current action of that, request a re-render, and then we've got a clear action, which just clears that out. We've got this make spinner guy, which is really just spinning up this loader component, adding the text of thinking to it. These colors here are, if I remember correctly, well, let's just see. They are the spinner color and the message color. Okay, so most of this is all just helpers to push information into into the history and update the TUI. So our last guy here is going to be think. It's going to take in a function that returns a promise of type. And that function is actually going to be our agent loop. So nothing really new here. What we're going to do in here is say this thinking loader is going to be this dot make spinner. So we've got our thinking loader, and we're going to call this dot clear actions. So we just got our agent loop just fired off. We're going to wrap all this in a try. We're going to have a catch, of course. And when all is said and done, we're going to have a finally where we clear our action status. On the error, we're going to clear out our thinking loader because we're not thinking anymore. We're going to say this dot history dot push, and this is just going to be yet another model message. So we're going to have role. In this case, it'll be assistant, and then content, which is going to be that guy. So if it's an instance of an error, return the message. Otherwise, stringify the whatever E happened to be. Now here we're going to say const result is our await function. And if you remember, it's the exact same thing we did in the index, which was reply. I'll call it reply await agent loop history. So here we're just going to say reply, and then we'll set our thinking loader to null, and we'll return our reply. And that should really be it. I'm going to format all this, and I know that's a lot of code, but everything, this is not there. Oh, it's missing invalidate, and we do need to do the render, my bad. Okay, so invalidate's a really easy one because it's going to be a no-op for us. You really end up, as far as I understand, you end up using this if you're going to be doing like streaming text to the screen, and I'm not doing that right now, so I don't really care. So I'm just going to make this a no-op. And then the other thing we need is our render method. So render is going to take in that width that I discussed. I'm going to say const lines is an array of strings initialized to an empty array. Say for const m of this dot history, so it's our messages. This dot append spacer, so we're going to throw in an empty line in there, and then lines dot push this dot render message and the width. So we get our message and our width. It'll figure out that render message will figure out if it's a user message or an assistant message. We don't have to worry about that. And we'll say this dot append thinking lines and width. And then finally we'll return this dot fit width, which we looked at a moment ago, lines and width. Okay, I think we're looking good. We are going to jump over to our index. We're going to bring in our agent UI. We're going to come down here, and for the most part, we don't really need, I don't think we're going to need any of this, but there's a couple bits in there that are more or less identical, and we do want to get those. So let's see, our history remains. We definitely need that, so let's keep that guy. And we'll initialize our class with new agent. Our new agent UI is of history. And then we just need to set up our input. We're still going to do a few things here, but this is replacing our prompt and our readline for the most part. So on input, it's going to be async. We called that query before, so just to point out down here, we had async query. We're doing the exact same thing. So async query. And to some degree, we are sort of doing this. So let me just grab these. I think we can just refactor them on the fly here. So this is going to be UI push, and that should all be the same. And then here we'll say if reply UI push the reply. And then this part is going to change. So we're going to say await UI.think. We're just passing in our agent loop. And we're going to add one more thing here. Into the agent loop, we're going to pass our UI, and I'll explain that in just a second. But for the most part, you know what, we are going to do our UI start. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Now I mentioned that we're going to pass our UI into our agent loop, and the reason I want to do that is in order to get those little messages that I was talking about, like, so we're not just sitting there waiting. There's our class, and then we're going to come down here into our on-step finish, and right outside, well actually here we're going to get tool results, which we get for free from the on-step finish. And then right outside of this step since to do, again, I'm just going to drop this in. And what we're doing is we're getting that tool call. And if we have a tool call, we're going to stringify its input, cut that down to 50. Then we're going to get our output off of the tool results with the same index. And then we're building up this little string. I'm not a huge fan of emojis. Put a little red dot for an arrow or an error and a green dot for success. And then we're going to set our action status to the tool name, the arguments, and the result. And with that, let's see, we don't need readline anymore. And I think we can try this guy out. Okay, so we've got groovy little lines. We can see where our cursor is. I'm going to say, give me 5 writing prompts. We got a little thinking spinner. There's our writing prompts. I'm going to say, explain ui.ts to me. The other thing you can see here is we are getting our Markdown formatting. So you can see lost library is in bold. And down here, we're getting our little actions, thinking and reading the file. Cool. So we got all those results. Now I did notice one thing. It was saying it was reading a file, but it wasn't saying what file it was reading. So I want to make sure that we're capturing that information. So I think it appears that anti-gravity was doing some weird stuff there and trying to overwrite my file. So we're going to try this one more time. And there we go. We get our file path and I am satisfied. So cool. Not an amazing UI, but we have the basic functionality. We have Markdown formatting. We have a little thinking going on. It's a much better experience.